Tennessee Bureau of Investigation says mistakes were made in the way it sent out an alert last month following the killing of a Dickson County deputy. TBI agents say they are working now to improve how those blue alerts are sent out.
10 News reporter Mark Salinger is live in Nashville tonight, speaking with TBI leadership about the biggest issues that they are tackling around the state. Mark?
Hey, Robin and John. As the TBI worked to find the Middle Tennessee deputy shooting suspect, people across the state got what's called a blue alert on their phones. It's something the TBI rarely uses, and now the TBI is working to make improvements so that it can be more comprehensive if they ever have to use it again. A blue alert is supposed to let people know that a suspect accused of harming a law enforcement agent is on the loose. On May 30th, TBI issued one for Stephen Wiggins. We heard from a lot of viewers wondering why there was no location of the suspect included in the alert. TBI says they are working to change that so alerts are more comprehensive in the future.
We're limited to 90 characters. This is what goes out in those cell phone alerts. That's something that we're working with our partners on, trying to expand the amount of information that's able to be provided in the cell phone alert. Something that happened in that alert specific is that there was an oversight on my part as to how that went out.
And TBI agent Josh Melton also said that TBI's information line went down after the alert was sent out. That led to the Bureau fielding a large number of calls from people seeking more information about that suspect after they saw the blue alert. And coming up on 6, in 10 News at 6, we'll hear more about the drugs that the TBI says are flowing into Tennessee, many of which they say are coming from Mexico. Robin and John, will send it back to you. Mark.